Welcome back, everybody, to another fantastic episode of the Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast. I am one of your hosts this week, Wrestling Chris G, and on the other line with me is my, I had one earlier today, and I completely blanked on it. I think it was something like the millionaire, like a millionaire joke or blimp joke, whatever. But my balloon buddy himself, Dougie Fresh. Dougie, my man, how you doing? Jesus, I had a good one and I can't think of it right now. Holy crap. How you
Oh,
doing,
that's
Doug?
funny. I'm good. I'm just over
I
here. I'm just your little blimpy buddy.
you are my bumpy buddy. and on the and also joining us here today on the podcast is our premium Patreon guest, Grant. Grant, my man, welcome back to the podcast. It's nice to have you back, man.
I mean, it's nice to be back. How's it going?
It's good. It's real good.
Good,
But,
good,
but
good.
besides me messing up my millionaire joke that I was going to make, but man, so we are. This episode today, everybody, is episode 84 of the original series called A Scare in the Air. And we are officially transferring over to the Orange Islands. So
Yeah.
Dougie, my man, we can literally say now, I know we've been saying it for the past few weeks, but we are officially done in the Kanto region because we are leaving the ground and venturing off into a whole new world now.
Now, my question to that would be, because I don't have it in front of me. When do they switch? Pardon me. When do they switch theme song?
The theme songs, I believe we have two more episodes. I believe that's on the Lost Lapras episode is when we get the new theme song. And with the new rap and all that. I got to figure out who sang that theme song. Maybe I can reach out to them and see if they want to come on to the show themselves.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so maybe I will go ahead and reach out to them and see if they're available. But But Grant, we we have officially finished all of the Kanto episodes as of this point, and
Alrighty.
I know, and to think because when we officially started this episodic show, we were like, okay, so we're gonna do every single episode, and at first it didn't seem like a huge challenge, and then you get down to the juxt of it, and you're like. Man, this why did we name it the Every Pokemon episode? Why couldn't we just call it something along the lines of every main story of Pokemon? Because man, this is a long journey that we're on, man.
Only the episodes we like. That doesn't quite have the same ring to it.
No, not at all. And I'm not sure and I'm sure it'll probably be premiered, but I'm actually currently working on a new logo for our show. And I'm sure it's going to be out there by the time it that this episode drops because I'm planning on dropping it in the next few weeks, but it's kind of similar to like the whole Pokemon the original Pokemon Go logo, Doug and Grant. It has we have like the half Earth, and I'm gonna put up our logo on there, and it's gonna be like in space. It's gonna look awesome. But I gotta fuck around with Photoshop a little bit better because apparently my photoshopping is not on par at all. So I have been learning Photoshop all day yesterday and part of the day today, and it is a bitch.
Yeah, yeah. I can.
I have artists in my family, and I've actually reached out to people, and I'm like, hey, can y'all help me with doing a new logo for the show? This is the idea that I kind of have. Can you help me out? And they're like, "Oh yeah, of course, of course, of course." And a year later, now I still don't have that logo. So,
I mean, worst case scenario, chalk it up to modern art.
uh, yeah. So,
Yeah, there you go.
but but all right, everyone. You guys are here to listen to Pokemon. So today's episode again is a scare in the air, or translated from Japanese, the airship hardship is what they named it in Japan. To be honest, I might go with the Japanese theme because that I
You
mean,
know, that ain't bad, but I do like scare in the air. I mean, it does rhyme.
yeah, it does rhyme. Grant, which one would you do? A airship
I,
hardship or a scare in the air?
I'm gonna say scare in the air.
Oh, outvoted. All right. But but this episode premiered in Japan February 4th, 1999, and here in the States January 8th, 2000. Yes, the very first 2000 episode. And Grant, you told us off air that you have a historic moment from January 8th. Um, so if you would like, go ahead and present it over to our audience.
I mean, yeah. So January 8th, 1790, George Washington made his first presidential, uh, yeah, State of the Union.
State of the
Yeah,
Union speech. There you
State of the
go.
Union address.
Oh, and that is pretty historic. And I'm surprised that Doug, how did we miss that? Because we've done January 8th before. How did we not do that? Especially you.
Yeah, that one kind of bothers me. That's kind of in the same vein of he had a guest on, and Grant, forgive me if this was also you, but we were still doing dates at that point, and we gave ours out. The guest was like, "Oh, they also repealed prohibition on this," and I'm just sitting there going, "Son of a gun!"
What was that you, Grant? Or was that a different guy?
No,
Okay. So
I
what?
had the Women's March.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, our guests are showing us up, Doug. Apparently,
That's why we stopped the segment.
Oh, maybe we need to dig a little deeper on our dates. Possibly bring it back in the future at some point. I'm sure it'll come back at some point, but we kind of need a break right now because give our audience enough time to forget the stuff that we have said. So
Yeah,
so when we bring it back and if we accidentally repeat ourselves, they're like, "Oh, so that did happen." Yeah. Give it
right,
another year.
exactly.
But all right, everybody. So I have the episode pulled up here, getting ready to watch. Grant, are you good on your end?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. And Doug, are you good on your end?
Yes, I am.
All right. So I will start this week's episode off and then I will start switching it between the both of you as well. So we start this week's episode with our heroes getting ready to go to Valencia Island to go and retrieve the mysterious Pokeball. I was about to actually call it its name, but they haven't given it the name yet. But the mysterious Pokeball that our heroes are going to be traveling the Orange Islands with. And Brock is over here. He's looking at a map. Misty is sitting down with Togepi, and and he Brock is like he's like, oh, the babes. He's like we need to figure out how to get to Valencia Island. Look at the beaches out here. And Misty is like, she's like, I don't care how we get there as long as we get there fast. I want as much time in the sun as possible. I got to work on my tan. And she takes out a thing of tanning lotion. And Togepi looks at the tanning lotion and is like, give me, give me. And I don't know how tanning lotion
Not
would.
tanning lotion. That's a can of soda.
It's
Is
like
that
honey.
is that no? That's
Because
that.
Togepi's drinking out of it.
Oh, okay. Well, she said she literally said, "I need to work on my tan," and then pulled it out. So poor Pokemon with their artwork on that. I'm just gonna throw that out there. And then we got Ash and Pikachu walking out of the thrift store, looking like they bought the entire store, and Pikachu holding the heaviest bag of them all. Pikachu is just sitting here. He's like, "Are you going to help me?" And they're sitting here talking, and they're like, "Okay, so it might take a couple of weeks for us to get out there," and Missy's like, "How long is it gonna really take us to get to this place?" And Ash is like, "Well, if we walk, about a month or so, but if we fly," and Brock is like, "Well, why don't we just take a blimp?" And Doug, I'm gonna switch this on over to you.
Say, well, we could take a blimp if we had any, amount of money at all. And, like you said, Pikachu's sitting there struggling. I want to know what's in Pikachu's grocery bag. It's never explained. And then they're like, yeah, but we don't have any money. And then they're looking, and outside of the convenience store, there's a couple of guys and they have a contest. And, um, a woman just won a set of refrigerator magnets. And they say, oh, the grand prize just happens to be an all expense a trip to Valencia Islands via blimp. And
Of
Ash
course.
is like, well, that's a cinch. I'll just go and win it. And he might as well have looked at the camera and said, "Well, I'm going to win this because otherwise
What are
we're
we
going to
doing
spend a
here?
month walking." And
7 more filler episodes.
I know, for real.
exactly. And we just got done with the Pokemon League, so Ash is like, "Well, I've got my receipt, and we'll just go and we'll win it." And Misty's like, "You seriously don't think you're going to win?" And cut to him getting the little golden pellet and winning the grand prize. And Ash is basically like, well, I guess you can't lose them all. And
And freaking Brock and Misty are sitting here like, did he really just win? They just faint. I love it.
yeah, pull the classic Pokemon fall out of the scene bit, and then we get the title sequence.
Yes. And then from here, and Grant, if you want to go over this next part of the scene after the title sequence.
Yeah, waiting for it to catch up. All right, yeah. So it goes to Team Rocket, and they're talking to Giovanni on like a computer here, and then Giovanni's like, "Hey, I got a task for you. Effective immediately, you're being transferred to the dirigible division,
I know.
or the blimp brigade."
Yeah, the Blimp
And
Brigade. Eh, I thought that was weird, and let's point out real quick that this was in the year 2000, like literally within the start of the second week of the year 2000, and they're on a computer having a straight up video call with Giovanni, and I don't know.
middle of the forest.
Yeah, in the middle of the forest. So they had Wi-Fi before Wi-Fi was even a thing. Because I don't know about you, but we were still using dial-up at this point, weren't we?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
2000. It might have even been before dial-up.
Yeah, for real. Well, people in China and Japan seem to have all the technology before it moves over here to the good old United States, but that's neither here nor there. But all right, Grant, you can go ahead and continue.
So he's like, yeah, Giovanni is like, yeah, serves a unique, important purpose in our organization. Only special supervisors chosen for this duty. And they start goggling. They're like, oh boy, we're actually getting recognition here from the big guy.
James
And
is
like,
crying.
it's like, all right, I'm counting on you. Don't let me down. They're like, oh, this is great. We actually, he likes us. He really likes us. And then, he's valuable. He thinks we are. They're arguing. And then Giovanni is over here afterwards, behind the scenes, kind of telling us that, like, he doesn't really care about them Blimp Brigade. He just wants them to essentially die and collect the insurance money, which is pretty dark, honestly.
It is, and I thought that
It's
was super dark when I was
it's
watching.
really dark. Like he just poor Team Rocket on that one.
Yeah, he said he had no repairs done to any of these jets for decades.
I
And
mean,
I
it brings up other questions about like the raffle of like where that was that involved in this.
so my guess here is the people that were over there doing this raffle were actually Team Rocket members in disguise because they're actually good at their own disguise because they're not Jesse and James. And Giovanni already knew, okay, well, I'm going to get Jesse and James. They've cost me a lot of money. So how can I get rid of them? I'll have them die in a blimp. That's how I'll get rid of them.
Die.
I mean, James is rich. I'm sure the insurance money is really good for him.
Oh, I'm sure. So, all right, let's see. So we we I'm trying to fast forward. There we go. Okay. So after Giovanni's talking, our heroes are walking up to the new blimp, and this blimp looks like it has seen a day. Like I don't even know. My one question would be, how did they even fly this blimp in to this location? The way that this blimp is, like the blimp looks like it's being held up by scotch tape that you can get from Office Max and just all sorts of just stuff that can go wrong. And the here Brock and Ash are looking at this blimp and they're like, all right. And she's like, well, this blimp looks a little old and beat up. And Ash is like, oh, of course it's okay to fly. He's like, it's not beat up, it's just broken in. And
Broken in, yeah. He's
that,
not wrong.
I know. And a worker comes right over. He's like, "You're not here for a blimp ride, are you?" He's like,
Yeah,
Ash is like, "Yes, sir."
Wide-eyed. He's got sweat coming down his cheek. Like he can already tell he's a little harried.
He's like, "Are we really gonna put these kids on a blimp like this? Can we be held reliable for this?" And Ash is in there. He's like, "Yeah, we want a round trip to Felicity Island on that blimp." And they're like, "Oh, you kids are brave. How much are you getting paid?" And Brock's like, "Getting paid? What do you mean?" And Misty, of course, she already had her concerns. She's like, "Is there something about that blimp that we ought to know about?" And the workers are looking at each other and they're like, "Yeah, look, that blimp is so dangerous. Everybody says it's haunted by a gang of ghosts." Now, okay, so I'm gonna kind of pause it here just for a brief second because he's saying that it's haunted by ghosts, but in my eyes, when he looked over at his partner, he's trying to scare these kids from just getting on this blimp. He doesn't want to say, "Okay, this blimp is not flyable. If you get on there, you might die." So
I would have flown that thing for $1 million.
Yeah,
for real. And
I would have turned around and just started walking.
I mean, if they're gonna pay me $1 million to ride it, I'd probably chip in. But
you can't take $1 million with you if you're dead.
You know, at that, I mean, give me one of those parachute bags, and as it's going down, I'm just gonna jump out and just be like, "All right,
I mean, it's Pokemon. I could have a Pidgeotto.
For real, a Pidgeot."
See, yeah. Kind of Pidgeot, but he let it fucking go, didn't he?
Yeah.
And and let's all be real. Charizard's not gonna die on a blimp. Charizard's gonna take off. So, I mean, Ash can literally throw him out, and that'll probably be the one and only time Charizard at this point will be reliable to Ash at all.
Now that is fair. If not for Ash's sake, for his other Pokemon, because I think he does respect other Pokemon.
Yeah, he respects Pikachu and he respects Togepi because he ain't gonna let Togepi walk off a ledge. Remember that. But all right, Doug. Team Rocket is popping up into the frame at this point. If you want to take this part of the scene, bro.
So this stuff always frustrates me, and it happens like like 4 times over the next 2 episodes. This one and next week as well. Um, so Jesse and James pop up. They're in like flight gear basically. Like
Top of the
Jesse is
line flight gear.
Jesse is like straight up in a flight attendant's uniform, and James is like could pass for a pilot without a second glance. And they're like, "Oh, have your tickets ready. We're beginning to board," and not disguising their voice. Not even really on disguise because James his hair's just straight up out there. How many guys with purple hair are walking around? I mean, Jesse, in all fairness, he's tucked up under the cap, but other than that, it's and I understand the logic is it's a kid show, but how many times have they run across Team Rocket?
Bro, they're 1,000+ episodes in and still get tricked by Team Rocket. Come on.
So I don't
Brock
know.
can smell Jesse, so
Right, and, Brock's a horn dog. I mean, for God's sakes, next episode he almost has a goddamn heart attack. Um, when we meet Professor Ivy, but that's next week.
That's next week. And boy, I got some things to say about Professor Ivy that I didn't notice until I rewatched these episodes.
So Ash is taking under advisement what the workers had said, and he's like, "Oh, what about the ghost?" And James is like, "Oh, they must have been those. Who told you about the? Who told you about anything about ghosts?" And he's like, "Those workers over there." And he's like, "Oh, they must have been from a rival airline." And they're just like, "Come on, come on, no time to waste, no time to waste." And they're pushing him towards the landing area, and I was like, "Oh, Giovanni must really trust us, and he must want us to get this kid's Pikachu, and we'll take him for a ride, all right." And they're getting pushed up the rampway, and it's like, "Oh, don't worry, you're gonna be in first class, you're gonna be fine."
Yeah,
Top of
Ash
the
is
line.
literally trying to give them the tickets because they have legit tickets. And he's like, nah, don't worry about those tickets. Like red
Just a
flag
piece of
right
paper.
there. But all right, Grant, you want to take the next part after they load up onto the blimp?
yeah. So we cut to Jigglypuff, kind of just walking along, sees the lever, thinks the lever's a microphone. She gets overjoyed and wants to go sing. Hits the lever, knocks it over, and it spills a bunch of water onto her. And then the blimp starts lifting off with a big rope hanging down. So she's like yelling at it, and then it gets her foot caught in the rope, and the blimp is on its way. And then it cuts to Ash and the gang walking into a lackluster room that they're like, this. I thought this was supposed to be first class. The chandelier is busted. The windows are busted. The ground looks pretty bad. And then Ash just kind of breaks through the floor and almost falls out the blimp. And he's just like, "Yo, help me out here!"
Literally, he's literally hanging. He's looking under him and has the sky like right underneath him. Like at this point, after I got pulled back up, I would have sat here and been like, okay, put this blimp on the ground. I want a different blimp.
The blimp should be falling out of the sky right now. I mean, if there's a hole in the damn. I mean, it's gone. There's no
I
like,
mean,
oh, it's just a hole. No, there's a hole, and it's just hot air coming out at this point. We're dying.
they put wooden boards over it, so it'll be fine.
It's also a cartoon.
Facts. Uh,
I do like when like Jesse and James come in here and be like, "You guys okay?" And Misty tells them to just like fuck off. Like,
Oh, you must be relaxed. Oh, shut up.
so, all right. So at this point, after Ash gets pulled back up, they're like, "Yeah, buzz off, ladies and gentlemen. Dinner is now served." And Pikachu's like, "All right." And from this point right here, they're sitting down and getting ready to eat some soup, and the soup is cold as hell. And Brock's like, this soup is ice cold. And James immediately goes, it's an old Eskimo recipe. And Brock is like, Eskimo? He's like, yes, our chef. And Jesse's like, she just hits him with a pan, and she's like, shut up. And the blimp starts wobbling back and forth at this point. And Jesse and James are hopping back and forth as the blimp is going back and forth, and Ash is trying to hold the damn table, and Brock is holding it from sliding as well. And they're like, "What the hell is going on here? What kind of pilot is flying this thing?" And Jesse and James are like, "Yeah, good question. Who is flying this?" They go over to Meowth and they're like, "You're asking me who's flying this big bag of gas?" And they're like, "Uh-huh, uh-huh." He's like, "Yeah, well, don't look at me. I'm slaying over a hot stove over here, which I don't know what he's making hot because the soup is ice cold." He's like, "I'm trying to keep my passengers nice and happy." And they're like, "Well, if it's not you, that means we haven't had a pilot since we took off." And then they're all like, uh-oh. And they fly over to the pilot's room, and it's literally flying itself. You see the old uh what kind of steering wheel would that be? Can one of you tell me? I was about to
I
say
mean,
something along the lines of
like an old pirate ship.
yeah, like a
Yeah, that's like
pirate
a
ship.
classic ship's wheel. That's just like a classic, pirate age ship's wheel. Just a wooden piece with some notches taken out. There's a couple of, you know, 3 or 4 handles usually, and it's just minding its own business, just kind of going to and fro. And, oh, the pilot, the blimp's flying itself, and they're like, well, what do we, one of us needs to fly it. And they all point at each other. They kind of do the not it gag, and yeah, it's like, oh, this is simple. All we got to do is look at the the instructions. And he's like, I'm going to check under no pilot, and
It's easy as flying a kite, Doug.
Because
well,
they
but that's
fly a
the
hot air
problem.
balloon.
Well, that's also true. Um, and Jesse's like, I don't even know how to fly a kite, and the blimp starts kind of dipping back and forth. Meowth says the manual says in order to um keep the ship from wobbling, um need to keep it balanced, and we go like a diagram, and we see that there's like 2 tanks of water in the front and the back, and it's like if you take out water from the front, it's going to start tipping backwards. If you take from the front, it's going to start doing a nosedive. And they say, well, you have to find perfect balance. And they're like, okay, well, it's kind of going back and forth. So and they go back and forth, and they're taking water out of each of the ends, and um, like, oh, this is easy. And it's like, oh, it's so we kind of play that game, and Jigglypuff gets dumped on and starts to puff up, and like has to like hang on to the rope. So it's just been hanging by its foot basically over an ocean, you know,
You
this
know,
whole time.
Jigglypuff will be fine because it will, once she untangles herself, all she has to do is just puff herself up and fly.
So they're struggling to find the balance, and they're tipping and they're tipping, and we cut to the dining room, and the table with Ash, Misty, Brock, Pikachu, and Togepi is just going to and fro. They're just wah, 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 Pika, and then they finally get it to balance out, and Jesse's like, I feel seasick. And Al says, "Don't you mean air sick?" And they're just, and then lo and behold, we're heading straight towards a storm cloud. And Al's like, "Let some water out the front. We can float above it." And he opens the front hatch, and it's empty because they've been fucking around with it for probably like half an hour. And Jigglypuff's like, "This is my chance," and shimmies up the rope and jumps in the front hatch. And James is like, "I think the front half's empty," and it's like, "We're going into the storm. If we we can." Meow's like, "If we hit that button," and he points up to the stereotypical big red button, and he's like, "If we hit that button, we'll make an emergency landing and we'll land in the ocean." And Jesse's like, "We can't land in the ocean. The boss is counting on us to to make this trip, and if we fail at this, we're definitely going to get kicked out of the Daredevil squad." Which, how in the hell are they Daredevils?
Well, get it, Daredevil, because you got to be pretty stupid to get into this blimp.
That's also true. And James is crying because he's like, "They're going to take my uniform away." And Jesse's like, "Well, we're overthinking this. As long as we capture Pikachu, we'll be fine." And
Of course.
then they start singing, "All we need is Pikachu, doo da, doo da," and um, Meow's like, all this blimp air must have gotten to him.
All right, Grant. You want to go over once we get back over to our heroes?
Yeah, so they all wake up from this crash that's been kind of knocking them about, and Misty's like, "How are you doing, Togepi?" And it's I don't know what that toy is called, but it's that toy with like the weird thing.
I remember those when I was growing up. I think you kind of like you open it and then there's like another version of it on
Yeah,
the inside and it gets smaller and smaller. So
there's a Pokemon based off of that now called Darumaka, which I think you guys did an episode about him,
yes.
like in the
What
Black
you
and White
call
series.
a Russian nesting doll.
Oh, there you
Yes,
go. There you
yes.
go. So
So she's out, found that, thought it was Togepi, and then she's like, "Well, that's not Togepi." Threw it in the air, and now she's like, "Well, Togepi's gone," and now the blimp is slowly going closer and closer toward the storm. And then who's that Pokemon? It's
it's
Vulpix.
it's
Why
Vulpix.
is it
What?
Vulpix?
Why?
Why?
Vulpix is not even in this episode. Come.
Vulpix is in the episode, just doesn't make really any significant
Okay,
contributions.
for like a minute, and it's like his group shot.
Because I mean, all right. Could they have used Vulpix to use its fire to keep this thing from going up or down like a hot air balloon, or does one of these blimps not work like that?
I mean, I don't know how blimps work, but there is. I don't know if I can spoil a scene later, but
Yes,
I
yes,
think it kind of the same. I think it's the same concept.
yes.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing. If Pikachu would get in trouble for about to do what it's about to do in a couple minutes, I don't think fire would fare much better either.
So,
Yeah.
but all right. So from here, after the who's that Pokemon, they're all looking around. They're like, Togepi, come out, Togepi, and they're walking around this whole blimp, which apparently has a whole bunch of rooms. Like I
Yeah.
don't know what. I mean, I've never been in a blimp, nor have I been in a hot air balloon, but I'm going to this summer. But but like a blimp, I don't think you have this many rooms inside. Like it's like they're inside of a mansion inside of this thing. They're walking into all these
Yeah.
rooms and there's
And none
like
of them seem to be affected by the rocking back
n-
and forth either.
no, everything is right intact. It's like they were in the worst room out of all rooms for this blimp.
Everything else was taped down.
I know, because let's be real. They so far we've seen a dining room, we've seen the pilot room, we've seen the kitchen, and we've seen a bedroom. Right now, we see a storage room.
Brock's looking at a chimney.
Yes.
chimney.
Why is there a chimney in a blimp? Like,
And from here, we have Jigglypuff coming and walking in the background. And Jigglypuff looks right up at the table and sees a plate with a spoon, and of course envisions that it's a big huge stage. So Jigglypuff is like, "Oh, Jiggly." And then we go straight from here to Ash climbing a ladder to the outside of this blimp, or not, well, not the outside, but yeah, the attic of this blimp. So this blimp just gets even bigger, and they're looking up and they're looking all around, and they're like, "What would Togepi be doing in a creepy place like this?" And Pikachu's like, "Yeah, let's get out of here." And Brock comes up and he's like, well, it's the only part of the blimp that we haven't looked yet. Now, I want to also throw out there, it's I get it. It's a kid show, everybody. It's a kid show. But how the hell could little baby Togepi climb this ladder that they just climbed to get up here, to get up to this spot? Like, the math just doesn't add up. And Missy's over here like, Togepi, where are you? Come on out. Doug, go ahead and take it, my brother.
But we haven't quite established we haven't nailed down just exactly what type of Pokemon Togepi is. So theoretically, it could teleport. Um,
Theoretically, yes.
I mean,
and
I could throw in like an actual cause for that.
what
Technically, Togepi's only power is Metronome, and there is an attack called Teleport, so it could use Metronome and then have used Teleport off the Metronome.
you know?
so
That's
there you
there you
That's
go.
super nerd. Yeah.
go. So they're looking for Togepi, and they're like, well, this, like you said, this is the last place that we haven't looked, and they see a flash, and Ash was like, what's that? And wait, I didn't see anything. And Ash is like, I could have sworn, and they're looking kind of down the way a bit, and it comes clearly into view, and like, look over there, it's this white figure, and we flash back to the workers saying that this particular blimp is haunted by a gang of ghosts, and they're like, they must have been telling the truth, because there it is right in front of us. This place really is haunted. And the little white sheep goes, ooh, and they all run, and
I mean,
go to the
haven't they seen ghost Pokemon in the past? Like, come on, Ash, they're not that scary.
I mean, he
Well,
did
and
kind of die and get pulled out of his body. Yeah.
For real.
And
I mean, and I
that's the
mean,
other thing. They say, oh, they're haunted by ghosts, and they leave it at ghosts. They don't say, oh, this blimp has been taken over by a group of ghost Pokemon. That's not scary, you see, because like you said, we've encountered ghost Pokemon. We know they're basically goofs.
yeah. And
Yeah.
and not to spoil anything in the future, but all the way up in Journeys, freaking Ash has a Gengar. He has a full blown Gengar, which is the goofiest of all goofs. So come on, don't be scared of this thing. And you're still 10 years old, so you can't be scared of ghosts. Stop being a. I was about to say something, but I don't know if it's right to actually say it. So I'm gonna keep keep it to
That's your
myself.
first instinct, yeah.
All right, so Grant, you want to take on this next part of the scene?
Yeah. So they see the ghost, and then it cuts to Team Rocket, and they're like, talking, and then like Meow says something, and then like Jesse just starts like trying to rip his face apart, knock it off, put it just stretching his mouth relentlessly, nonstop. And then like the ghost comes up behind him, Meow's freaking out, still being like, ripped apart here. And he's like panicking, and they're like, what's going on? There's a ghost. And there is a ghost, and they freak out, get scared, and run away. Like Meowth in hand as well. Like,
Yeah. I felt so bad for Meowth in this scene because Meowth is like, she literally has her fingers like in his mouth and is just flailing him around like a napkin, just like, oh my god, oh my god. and and freaking Jigglypuff comes back in, and the sheet flies off of it. So we find out that it was Jigglypuff, and she comes down to the ground and then gets knocked and by the turbulence that's going on above them because there's a storm brewing. Of course, because we can't have a Pokemon episode without things just continuously getting worse. So the blimp is now rocking back and forth. It has no water in it, and there's nobody flying it, and this thing is just going all over the place. So it's at this point now that we get back to our heroes, and Ash is like, this whole blimp must be full of ghosts. I think we should try to get off this thing. And Misty, of course, is sitting here and she's like, I'm not going anywhere without my Togepi. Doug?
Which is admirable. And she's
And
like,
Brock also mentions, like, where are we going to go? We're a mile high. Like,
which is also true.
like,
You know, Misty does have basically a pack full of water Pokemon, and Ash does have Squirtle. So it's a kid's show, they'd probably be okay. But Misty's like, I'll basically battle anybody you put in front of me to get Togepi back. And Team Rocket's basically like, that's our cue, and they're kind of posing on a ladder, and Meowth's hanging down, and they're trying to do well, they start their
The
motto, and then they get knocked, and then they have to regroup, and they are able to do it. And Misty's pissed off. She's like, we have much more important things to worry about right now than you goofs. And go on, get out of here. And Jesse's like, we're not going anywhere. Quite frankly, there's nowhere to go. And Meowth's like, you're stuck, and you might as well just hand over the Pikachu and make it easy on yourself. And Jesse and James are like, let's make this more interesting, and they throw out their Pokemon.
And we get Wheezing and Arbok, which is a bad idea.
Horrible idea. 'Cause how much space do you think you have here? And
well, apparently we're in a mansion.
well, this is also true. And Jesse sends Arbok to use Bite and Pikachu counters with Thunderbolt, and basically the whole place goes up, and you can see the electricity kind of reverberating off the pipes. Misty's like, you can't use electric attacks in a blimp.
Grant, you wanna go from here?
yeah, so, like, yeah, you can't use that. You go make it explode. And Ash is like, wow, that's a good point. So here comes Wheezing. Brock throws out Geodude to do the heavy lifting because you can't use like heat. So Geodude's getting intense. He just grabs Wheezing and just throws him like a bowling ball and breaks the top of the blimp. And then Wheezing comes back and rips a bigger hole. And now they're truly just they're not having a good time. The lightning's flashing. There's Togepi just on the rim of the blimp walking. So their heroes run off. And Team Rocket's like, well, let's just sit here and think about what we've done. They start making circles on the ground and thinking they messed up. Then Mouse like, snap out of it. We got to go get them. And so they run. They go get. Then the heroes go to find Togepi. They're telling Togepi to come down, but Togepi's kind of just doing its thing. But Misty's like, to hell with that. I'm climbing this ladder. And she asks for Bulbasaur's help. So Bulbasaur gets to come out and like balance Misty with the Vine Whip so she doesn't fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's kind of just she's balancing, He's taking step by step, and then Team Rocket's watching. Don't
So
get worried about. Yeah.
and they're too busy worrying about Togepi to worry about us. And they're like, now's our chance. If one of us could walk across the beam, we could sneak up from behind and get that Pikachu, which is a horrible idea. Like
Terrible.
you're in a blimp that is completely exposed now, and Meowth gets the bright idea. He's like, "This is the job for Meowth," and Meowth starts um what are those used to be called? Jungle
Monkey bars.
monkey bars. There you go.
Monkey
And
bars.
and he starts climbing across the ladder like monkey bars. And the blimp finally gets out of the storm, and it blinds me out because it's now sunny out. So of course we're going from extreme extreme circumstances to now we are in extreme sunlight, and it's blinding Meowth. And Meowth is now holding on to the monkey bars by one paw, and Meowth is like, "Ah, somebody help!" And if Meowth falls at this point, Meowth is going to fall through an exposed part of the blimp, and freaking Jesse is like, so much for guts. He's acting like a scaredy cat. Ba-bum. Doug.
And we cut to Misty, who's walking along the beam to grab a hold of Togepi. And she's like, be very steady, don't move. And she's like 2 steps away, and Jigglypuff just pops down square in the middle of them. And Ash is like, how the heck did Jigglypuff get all the way up here? And Jigglypuff's got its little marker and puts it up and is, gonna sing. And Misty's like, oh, please don't sing. And, and then we get a little bit of turbulence, and Team Rocket goes tumbling, take one piece of fabric with them, and Meowth's climbing up. And luck of all lucks, the piece of canvas basically catches the wind and becomes like an impromptu parachute. So they're like, holy shit. And Jigglypuff lands on the parachute and starts to sing. And, you know, Team Rockets fall asleep and lose their grip, and they go floating. They land in the ocean. You see a little puff, and Misty has Togepi, and Bulbasaur brings her down, and she's like, "Don't wander off like that again." And Togepi's like, "I was having a good time. You see how high I got?" Um, and they're like, "Oh, we're just glad you're safe." And Togepi's like, "Oh, this is probably better than walking across beams." And they look over and they see that some of the tanks of air have been punctured, and they're like leaking gas at an alarming rate. And
They're going down.
and Ash is like, "What's the plan, Brock?" And um, Brock's like, "Let out your Pokemon." And he's like, "What's that gonna do?" And Ash is like, "I get it," which there's no fucking way he does, because he's been dumb as a box of rocks before. There's no way he just shapes up and is like, "Oh, no, you don't."
Grant, you wanna take this next part?
So yeah, they start letting out the Pokemon, and like Brock's like, all right, we figured this out. Let them all loose. Zubat, Vulpix, Geodude, and then Onyx comes out, and then they all have a panic attack as he sinks the ship.
Right.
Which, yeah,
They
and
should have fallen out of the sky. There shouldn't have been any gradual fall. He should have gone.
I
Yeah.
mean, if anything, Onyx was helping out, lowering it to the ground. Like it wasn't like falling.
That's true.
Oh yeah, Ash pulls out Squirtle, and then Misty gets Psyduck and Staryu. They're slowly getting to the land, and Brock's steering because I guess he knows what he's doing. And then so Ash has to run back and forth. This entire blimp is back and forth, like just like before. Just
Trying to balance this thing.
yeah, like come
And
on, other side, back the other way. Come on, guys.
And of course, they see the island coming up right in front of them, and as they're running back and forth on this blimp, they're about to make a huge crash landing. Which I don't know who's going to repair all of this ground. I'm just throwing that out there. But Brock is steering this thing. They come crashing down to the base and just boom, and it hurls. And I don't know about you, but I would think someone would be drastically hurt from this blimp crashing the way that it just crashed onto Valencia Island.
it's a kid
I
show.
mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's a kids show. I mean, come on, we've had episodes where Pokemon were like almost decapitated on the Jason Page episode with the hospital. Like, come on, they had car accidents on there. Ash has been knocked unconscious before. Come on.
Just seen James fall out of the sky almost every episode.
Exactly. we never see their landing unless it's in a tree full of Beedrill. All right. So they crash land and Misty looks up and she's like, "No way. We made it." And they look up, the blip is all torn to shit. Ash is still awake even though he crashed onto the back of the blimp, and Pikachu's upside down on top of its head. And I don't know about you, but all these Pokemon can't be good for the body for crashing into a human being. I'm just gonna throw
No.
that out there. But
I mean, Geodude alone is probably breaking a bone.
but it's kind of weird because as soon as they crash land and we find out all of our heroes have survived and that they are now on Valencia Island, we go straight to the narrator. And at this point, we get the pan back, and that's the end of the episode. So we're done. We're on an island of the Orange Islands as of now because we go straight into the Pokemon jukebox at this point. So that's this week's episode, everybody. How'd y'all
Very
like it?
abrupt ending. Very abrupt.
Yeah.
I mean that it was something. I mean, I enjoyed reviewing the episode a lot more than I enjoyed actually watching it because I'm like, there's so much going on, yet there's not much going on at all in this episode at all. So other than that, as we do in every episode, I'm gonna go down. I'll be the last one this time. So, Doug, what would you give this episode on your Dougometer as an introduction over to the Orange Islands?
This is probably a 2.5 if I'm being
Generous.
generous. Yeah.
All right, Grant.
I mean, I was gonna say 2.5. Like, there's points when I'm watching this one, I'm just like drifting, and it's a not a filler because it's a point A to B episode, but
Yeah.
they could have done a little more.
Yeah, they could have done a lot more. And
Yeah.
all right, me, I'll go ahead. I'll be in the same boat as you guys. I'll go ahead and give this a nice 2.5. You know what I think I should start doing? I should go back on these. Well, no, that'll kind of spoil it if I give the star ratings in the description. Yeah, I'm gonna keep that off of there. People need to listen to hear our star reviews. But
Yeah.
but all right, it is now that time of the show where I'm going to open up a Pokemon pack, and it's not a pack from Walgreens. You haven't heard that podcast yet, but last week I got a an off-brand Pokemon pack from my Walgreens around the corner, Grant, and it had 20 cards in there and one foil card. and I opened it up, and all of the cards were fake from Walgreens.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've had that experience.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling. And I ripped the full because they actually looked better. They were like your better fakes. So I was still skeptical because the foil card was kind of like curling up, and I was like, this looks like a sticker. So I ripped it, and of course it was a sticker, and I was like, all right. I was like, no more buying these from Walgreens going forward. But I do have two packs in my hand. I have one Sword and Shield Fusion Strike pack, and I have one Sword and Shield Brilliant Stars pack. Grant, I'm going to let you pick which pack I open on this podcast.
Uh, the brilliant one.
Brilliant Stars. All right.
Yeah.
I was hoping because the one I picked from the back it has Charizard on it, and that's my favorite Pokemon. I was hoping you would pick it. All right, let's go ahead and get this open. Ooh, and it's a black rim, which means that this is going to be a good pack, everybody. A good pack. All right. Good job, Grant. All right.
Yeah.
So what energy am I about to look at, Grant? Let's see if you can get it.
Water.
Water, and I'm gonna flip it. Ah, it's electric. And
Ah.
this is kind of, I think the print on this card kind of faded. There's a little red line going through the energy card. All right. So that I would say that's kind of an error card. But I got a Tropius, a Claydol, a Fresh Water Set trainer card, Baltoy, Snornut, a Nosepass, a Milcery, a Cubchoo. My reverse hollow is a Grotto, and I have a holographic Morpeko V card. Nice. And this looks like it's taking place at a VMAX stadium, and this is really nice. Really nice. All right, cool. I'll take it. And for all of you listeners out there, because I've started doing this and I was told to keep doing this, so I'm going to keep doing this. So, but the code for this week's Pokemon card pack is MNDQKTPRMHWT6. And that's the only time I'm going to say it. So go ahead and whoever can get that, first come, first serve for that Pokemon pack. But other than that, that is this week's episode. Thank you again for coming onto the show, Grant.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's always fun.
Absolutely. And Doug, do you have any last words that you want to say before we end this week's podcast?
Yeah, thank you for your continued support. It means a lot. You know, you've been on twice, which means you've stuck with us, and that speaks volumes.
Yes. I would like to thank you again for coming on and continuing to be on our Patreon. And if you want to be like Grant, everybody, there are 2 slots available as of the recording of this podcast that you can come and jump right on and give your support, and you can become a guest yourself, or you can just support our show and you can get episodes a week in advance, and you also get our specials a month in advance, which we have been doing the past couple months. And I'm sure Grant can attest that it's nice getting those specials a month in advance.
It's very nice, yeah.
So, all right, everybody. Well, that being said, again, thank you, Grant. If you want to go ahead and give your goodbye, Grant.
Goodbye, Grant.
And Doug, if you want to go ahead and give your goodbye, Doug.
Goodbye, Doug.
And this is Wrestling Chris G telling all of you I will see you next week for another Orange Islands episode, everybody. So I will see you soon. Have a good night.